Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. Welcome back to another episode. We've hit the 30s today, number 39. It's Adelaide Crow, Wayne Milera. It's been a little bit of time since we've had this man on the podcast. We've had Tim on board, had Rids, we've had the Statesman. Thought we'd bring him back. I've got Kane on for this episode. Hello, buddy. How you doing, man?
Good, thank you, MJ. You are flying in this top 50. I can't believe we're already into the 30s.
39 is where we are up to. And look, injuries have probably been the big statements when you look for keywords to sum up Wayne Milera. You're looking for an excitement, you're looking for dare, and then injuries. The great opportunity for us as we head into 2021 is, can he fulfill his potential as a breakout candidate who's got a little bit of value for us, and actually maybe even be someone we keep by season's end. Just the 23 years old. He is listed as a defender for us. Only a couple of games last year, and his best scores came against the Swans in round one. It was a 96 in SuperCoach, a non-adjusted 63 against Sydney. While from a career perspective, he does have some tons on the board. In SuperCoach, his best ever is against Melbourne, a 112, while it's a 116 in AFLFantasy against the Gold Coast Suns. If we're talking averages, there's some potential to like there. 83 is what he delivered for us in just a couple of games last year. He has been given an injury discount in SuperCoach. Because of that, he's priced just over $310,000, while in AFL Fantasy, it's a 51.1, or if you want to play the adjusted averages game, it's just off 64. In those formats of Fantasy and Dream Team, he's going to be priced just under $450K in Fantasy and just a touch over $380,000 in Dream Team. And Kane, when we talk about Wayne Milera, you don't have to look too far through the highlights. Why, you can see some Crows fans think he's the reincarnation of Andrew McLeod with some of the way he carries, runs, and takes on the game off half-back. He's an incredibly special talent. And I'm sure we'll talk about his body at different times in terms of his health, if he can get that right, he's got that incredible skill set that fantasy scorers and Adelaide supporters just want to see out on the ground.
Oh, he's super eye-catching, MJ. He's got all the X factor that you get excited for as a fan and just a neutral player watching the game. When Milera does something special, it's as special as anyone else in the competition. You mentioned how excited Crows fans are. Well, the club's locked him away till 2025. No one has a longer contract at the Adelaide Football Club, and that was at the start of last year. And when I think back to Milera, MJ, it was his third season playing regular footy, which was 2018. That actually saw him have a lot of buzz going into the 2019 option as a guy that was going to elevate himself from a very good scorer to actually maybe jumping up to being the keeper for us long term. And the reason he had so much buzz was he finished the 2018 season averaging 85 in DT and 92 in SuperCoach in his final 9 games. His season average that year was 75 in DT and 80 in SuperCoach. So that fast finish to the year that we love to see and has served us so well year after year in projecting that role going forward. And to be honest, people were proven right at the start of 2019 because he started off the first 4 games going 91 in DT and 96 in SuperCoach. So across a 13-game stretch across the back half of 18, the start of 19, he averaged 87 DT and 93 SuperCoach points.
It's not bad, is
it? Again, you're probably not quite, MJ, at that what we'd consider top 6 tier, but really you're probably in that top 15 bracket. And for a guy that's as young as Milera, that is super impressive. Sad thing is for Milera is that since then, again, he got injured against the Suns in round 5 of 2019, missed 4 games and came back just averaging 75 DT and 70 SuperCoach. And then obviously you couple in that last year was just 2 games. So really we haven't seen Milera at his best for almost 2 years, for a long period of time. But as you mentioned off the top, MJ, with the prices, we've got this guy priced at 58 pretty much across the board. So we know that 15 to 20 points is sort of that threshold where we feel like there's some really good value no matter what they're priced at. If you can project forward 15 to 20 points, you have to be looked at. And again, Milera, you could even argue in some of the formats, could even have as much as 30 points of upside if he really puts together his best season.
It's really true. You talk about some of those numbers, like right at that front end of the 2019 season that kind of gave us that proof that 2018 probably just wasn't a fluke. Look at this is the numbers of the breakdown of the averages Kane shared: 87, 95, 96, and 86 in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, while in SuperCoach, it was the 82, 105, 109, and 86. A couple of injuries came through there, but upon his return, he delivered 6 scores above 80, including a ton in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. 3 scores 96 and above in SuperCoach. One of them was a 114. And you're right. We're not at the price point of looking at him and contrasting him to a Zach Williams and going, okay, he's in that 70s and 80s range to really make it worthwhile. He needs to pop. He needs to go 90 plus across the formats. He doesn't have to do that. Now, he's got the potential to be a low-end D6, keep him for the year. If things go well, both in terms of role and probably more my concern would be, can he get through 22 games of AFL, given that historically, that's just not been what Miller has done. Just 2 games last year, 17 in 2019 with multiple injuries, 19 in 2018, and then 2016 and 17. Look, I'm prepared to discount them. Those were Adelaide's kind of push to the grand final years, and he just wasn't quite in the best 22 at that point in time. And so really it's 2018 and beyond. I'll start to count as Miller is inside that best 22 unit. What I think is exciting for people at that price point is, as you've already talked on, he's got the potential to be the low end D6, or at worst, he's the guy that you quickly, whether it be after 6 weeks or right up to his multi-buy round at round 14, you flip him and he becomes one of the defenders that we might have already talked about in the 50 most relevant that have popped a little bit, the Crisp, the Ridleys, or the Daniels, who by then have all had their multi-buy round.
Yeah, that's the appeal, MJ, is you don't get too many guys at this price point, one, that are actually best 22, and I mean clear best 22. You know, he'd be pushing the top 10. Again, as I said, he's got a 5-year deal. He's been factored in to be a long-term part of this side. So to get a guy at that price at 58, that's got incredible job security, again, if fit, which we obviously all hope he's going to be, and if he's not, well, we'll be pretty clear, especially during the preseason, has the scoring potential to be, as you mentioned, probably a D6 at best, maybe D7 if you're really, really lucky.
Yeah.
And also has shown scoring for 2 seasons that is 20 points above what he's priced at.
Yeah.
So really the only reason I think he doesn't fit in someone's team is if we get inundated with back rookies.
Yeah.
And ones that we feel really, really good about, because then I can see at that point, you've probably locked away, I feel, probably 2 of Lloyd, Whitfield and Laird.
Yeah.
You mentioned Zach Williams, who again, with a good preseason, you'd have to have above of Milera purely for the fact that they're probably both got similar upside in terms of points over what they're priced at.
Yeah.
And obviously with Williams doing that, he would be in the top 6 defender range with the potential to be a really, really big scorer. So I think the only reason you don't pick Miller is if there's a squeeze in your structure and you're so happy with 4 or maybe even 5 back rookies in that line. And there are some potential good, potential ones that were either drafted this year or didn't play in previous years. So there is some names to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
I think that's the only real reason you don't fit him in, because I just see at this price point and what he can deliver with that job security, it's just not going to burn you. I feel like 70 is almost the worst you'll get. And if you can time it right and he has a good game in there, it's not hard for him to make 100K, and you find that player, like you mentioned earlier, the Daniel, the Stewart, all those type of guys, and make a move.
Yeah, exactly. Look, where he's at in terms of his health, he's recovering from a stress fracture that was what they ended up putting him in for end of season surgery. He's still not in full contact training at this point, but he, as according to the club, as recently as just the start of last week, they believe he's right on track to be where they want him to be fit, firing, and ready for games in round 1, which is exciting for us. Even though the Crows are in full rebuild mode, Wayne Milera is very much a part of the Crows' plans. I actually think he's going to play a combination of some halfback and some wing role. I think the Crows are very much wanting to see guys like in the halfback. I think it's going to be the Hamills and the McPherson. He's going to probably long-term take over a Luke Brown role. I think they want to see Lockie Scholl playing up a little bit higher up the ground across the wing. I think Brodie Smith might eventually move into the Lockie Whitfield type when he's played forward role, which is start at half forward, push up across the wing, and then use that penetrating foot. So I think Miller has got that ability to use he loves to take the game on, like go and do a gift search for Wayne Milera and you see him multiple times just getting out of dense traffic situations and daring the football on. He loves to use the ball by foot. He loves to use his pace. So I think that there's a spot for him on that outside role for the Crows. Even Haitley coming in, I don't think that's going to impact his scoring or his potential too much. I think you're right, Kane. I think the only reason you don't go near him, because he is best 22, he has got a scoring potential, is you don't need a stepping stone defender and you don't think he's going to be enough value to be a keeper. So I think in AFL fantasy, like if you play that format of the game, if he's fit and named round 1 at that price, gosh, that's really hard to say no. While in SuperCoach and Dream Team, maybe you're looking for a value D4, he'd then probably need to get into contention. If he's a D3 for someone in those formats of SuperCoach and Dream Team, you're probably running just that little bit too thin and putting a lot of trust that your rookies are all going to come off.
Yeah, and the other thing, MJ, especially in SuperCoach, is that he's actually going head-to-head with the likes of Jackson Haitley, Buddy Franklin, Dyson Heppel. There's guys in other lines that are a similar price point. And if you're talking purely as a stepping stone then, there's guys, those 3 guys, you'd probably all give higher scoring potential if everything goes right than Milera. So if it's purely just, I need one player in this price bracket, those guys all, in my mind, have proven 90 plus potential in SuperCoach.
Yeah.
Obviously, Haitley's the one that no one knows for sure, but we've seen enough at Giants and we've seen a role that's opened up for him, and there's a few factors. So that's where I feel like structurally, a 300K price, again, there's plenty of upside, but sometimes you just can't have too many.
Yeah.
And if all those other guys tick the box in that range, or as I said, if rookies come to light, you can have the luxury of going more guns and rookies and passing on a guy like Miller and not needing that stepping stone. If the rookies are dry, though, a guy like Miller is going to be super important purely because we know he's going to be in the team and he can score. But I think draft MJ is the one that gets really interesting in this defender line, because we know when there's salary cap buzz about a guy, they can often get pushed a little bit earlier than they often should. And I feel like Miller is that type of guy this year that might go a little bit earlier than he should, purely because he's going to be so popular in the salary cap formats.
Well, right now, if we talk about salary cap formats, I think he's about 12% of AFL fantasy teams at the moment. Again, that's the only format that's officially open at time of recording. The others are hopefully just a couple of days away from that taking place. So he needs to probably pop to that 20% in a couple of the formats to really get that preseason hype. But as we get closer, as those cows don't there, then I definitely think from a draft perspective, he could really go. He's got the potential to be a 90 guy in SuperCoach. I think that's probably maybe that's his lid. Low 80s guys, probably his AFL Fantasy and Dream Team lid. I wouldn't be drafting him at a D3. That's what I think his return value could be. I feel like at D4 is about the right risk point. But as you said, someone could be really bullish or really light on defenders. And because of that, I actually could see a world where some get either really bullish or are really skint in the back line where they need him earlier than D3.
Yeah, the funny thing about the back line is there's always people on the waiver wire, the Robbie Tarrants of the world that are low 70s.
Yeah.
So there is some appeal in a guy like Miller who you think he can push to probably the early D4, late D3 territory if he gets to that, 82, 83 range.
Yeah.
But I also feel like with defenders, there's so many guys that are just rock solid. Your Darcy Byrne-Jones, these type of guys that no one ever really targets, but if they fall into your lap, you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of where Miller might get into. You're not really going to target him per se because I don't see that big jump. But also, there's not much risk. So you'd always take a guy like Miller over a Robbie Tarrant type who's just going to be locked into that 65 to 75 range. At least there is a case to be made that Miller can go up.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think he's the type of guy in draft that's going to be deciding too many results. He's a guy that
if you want to look
you
at
might play most weeks, but there might be some weeks where you just
Yeah.
like someone else's matchup even more.
Yeah, if you want to look at, some of the other defenders, let's say the 50 mark in terms of where they're ranked based on averages in 2020. Some of the guys around the 50 marker in SuperCoach, guys like Darcy Moore, Jack Lukosius, Brodie Smith, Darcy Byrne-Jones, Hunter Clark. You'd presume in SuperCoach.
It's more competitive than a lot of people think, isn't it, MJ?
Yeah, it is. Like they're probably going before him in the SuperCoach format. So, he's drifting out, while in Dream Team, again, you want to look around just the 50 marker in terms of where they're ranked right now. You've got a Nick Newman. Again, he's coming back from an injury. You've got a Jack Scrimshaw, Michael Hibbard, Liam Baker's got a bit of value in him through there. Hunter Clark's up around the 30s. Jason Johansson's around the 30s. Nick Caulfield, Jake Lukosius, they're all mid-30s. So he probably could be someone, in that 40s rank that people go, oh, he could pop into the top 30 overall, sort of defenders. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think a reach is D3 to draft on draft day. D4, it feels okay. If you pop him at a D5 as your last on field, you're probably pretty happy at that point going, look, at worst, he's going to give me a 70s, which is what I'd probably get anyway. At best, he's got the potential to sneak up 1, 2, maybe even 3 rungs if everything goes my way.
Yeah, I feel like in that backline, MJ, you're going to be leaving it till last. Like if you've got a 50-50 between a defender and honestly even taking an 8th mid that's 95 plus, like I'd be more for that, because we all know that once you get into the season, it is so hard to restock on the midfield front, whereas super easy to plug and play a defender. And there is always 3 or 4 of them that we didn't even have on our radar and become very, very usable. So yeah, I'm probably almost the belief where I'd rather have an extra mid or maybe even 2 extra mids and really try to deprive people of that pool of 95 guys that are slotting in every week. Because like I said, you can go on the waiver wire and find a defender that's, even as close as 5 points to what I think Miller's sort of worst is. And you can just rotate them through every week. So again, as we say, D3, D4, I'd be even of the belief that it's probably for me pushing out to even, the 16th to 18th round in the draft, just because
field sort of defender.
Yeah, because as I said, like I just think there's so much value often throughout the season having that midfield cover in particular. Because if you want to go to the pool in the midfields, you're looking at guys that are 75, 80 guys.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Whereas funnily enough, in defense, you can get those type of guys. And as we always say, the matchup game is a lot easier in defense because there's so many sides that allow so much ball in that back 50. So while we say D3, D4, which is certainly his potential, I think in the big picture of the sides and looking at all those names you read out in defense that I honestly couldn't split. If I did a draft every different day, I'd probably get a different player in that range.
Yeah.
I think for me, he is more of around 16, 18 type of guy, depending what is happening in other lines. Keeper league, obviously you'd roll him up a little bit.
Yeah, maybe
just because of the age. And I do think as much as we can anticipate, he will have defender status for long enough that you can build around that. Obviously, nothing worse than, building your side. This guy will be a defender and it gets stripped of you the next year and you've got a really hard call at the list lodgement time of year. But I feel like, again, in that case, you'd probably roll Miller into maybe the round 12 to 14 mark. Again, I don't give huge weight because I don't really see him ever being more than an 88 to 90 guy in DT at best. Which is very solid, but again,
not to give up a top 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up one of those top 10 round picks to do it. I'm just going to be very happy if I get him in that sort of mid-teen range.
Yeah, some good thoughts from you. If you want to go and read the article on Wayne Milera, it is online now for you at coachespanel.tv. If you want to go and read any of the other player articles, they're all online, as are the podcasts for every single one of those players at Google Podcasts, Spotify, and also you can find that at the Apple iTunes store as well. There is plenty of stuff for you to check out right there. Make sure you go and check that out. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the 50 Most Relevant.
Now give it truth, give it up, give